Ko su Kri? U stereotipu koji je rođen krajem 15. vijeka kada je Kolumbo otkrio Ameriku, a mislio da je na obalama Indije, Kri je pleme američkih indijanaca. Greška je zvanično ispravljena, ali je stereotip još živ. Kri su starosjedioci Amerike, autohtoni narod pod Arktika. Danas su jedna od snažnijih i značajnijih starosjedilačkih zajednica i predstavljaju najveću skupinu prvih naroda koji žive na velikom području Južne Kanade. Kri zajednica, djeca prirode, i danas živi od lova i ribolova, govori Kri jezik i naročito posljednjih decenija oživljava bogato etnološko blago, običaje, vjerovanja, rituale, plesove. U malom selu Voskagoniš, koje se nalazi u jednom od 9 Kri naselja, najveće kanadske provincije Quebec, rođen je i odrastao Neil Diamond, poznati kanadski režiser, fotograf i novinar, a od 2011. godine stanovnik Nikšića. Neil svojim dokumentarnim filmovima širom svijeta svjedoči istini o starosjediocima Amerike, a svojim fotografijama i tekstovima istini o ljepotama Crne Gore.
My name is Neil Diamond. I am from a small village in northern Quebec, about a 17-hour drive north of Montreal. And I was born there in 1963. I was born in a small village. It's one of the oldest communities in Canada, actually, one of the oldest European settlements. And the Hudson's Bay Company got its start there. And so I grew up there. I went to school just north of Waskaganish. And I have been attending school all over Ontario, Canada. I kept moving around, and eventually I ended up in Montreal. I was studying photography, film, and journalism. I'm the youngest of 13 children, which is kind of weird. And I grew up not speaking English until I attended school. I was never comfortable speaking English until I was about maybe 12 years old or something. So I remember my first day of school. The teacher was a French-Canadian woman, and of course she didn't speak our language, so we all had a hard time trying to communicate with her. So we had to learn from 7 years old to learn to speak English and read and write English, and eventually French. People from where I come from, the language is still very strong. They teach Cree in schools from kindergarten till grade 6. It's all Cree with 1 hour of English every day and French. And from after grade 6, from 7 on till graduating high school, they switch to English. So by the time they enter college or university, they speak 3 languages, a lot of them. Cree being the mother tongue, English, and for a lot of them French. They speak French too. So I grew up just hearing stories. We didn't have television until I was probably 17 years old, so Our entertainment was sometimes they would show films at the community hall, and everybody would go. And they were all in English, and they were usually cowboys and Indians, and Elvis Presley movies, or biblical epics, and like the Ten Commandments, stuff like that. So that's what that's how we grew up. And we had, of course, my parents were storytellers. They knew stories from that went back generations and generations. You know, like we have stories that have to do with when the Vikings came to North America, when they landed in Newfoundland, because the whole of northern Canada is Cree. We have a large group. The Cree the Inuit, the Eskimo, you would know them as, and the Ojibwe are the only 3 languages in Canada that are expected to survive. So our language is still very strong. The Inuit, the Eskimo people's language is still very strong, and the Ojibwe. And so our people cover almost the entire north of that part of the world. And I like to compare it to the Slavic language, with the Algonquin, all the way down to Virginia, the East Coast, all the way into Montana. There's a small Cree community in Montana, near the Little Bighorn, where the big famous battle was fought. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have these stories that I would hear growing up about the Vikings when they came, because we're related to the people who were on the east coast of Canada, who would have who would have encountered the Vikings when they came to North America. So those stories were passed along and carried through 1,000 years, you know. So that's how I grew up, hearing all these stories.
Esencija tih priča pratilac je umjetničke karijere Neila Diamonda. Ona je nadahnjivala stvaraoca u neru režisera, novinara i fotografa. Znao je šta želi, a putevi do ostvarenja tih želja ukazivali su se iz svjetova kojima su nagrađena djeca prirode. Neil ih je upoznavao, prepoznavao i pamtio iz priča svojih roditelja, uz koje je odrastao u Voskagonišu i koje su temelj za njegova autorska zdanja.
Well, when I was still attending college in Montreal, and I received a call from a childhood friend who was involved in radio and television, and he had quit working at CBC, and he called me one day and he said, would you like to start a magazine, a newspaper with us? I said, yes. They needed a photographer, so, and I had just gotten out of studying photography and film and some journalism. And so we started a magazine called The Nation, and we started with practically nothing. We didn't get paid for like 6 months. You know, we were just doing it for the love of doing this kind of work, because there were no newspapers that were reaching the people in the north. It was mostly, you know, just rumors going around. There was a bit of radio, but the radio services they didn't really cover news, local news. They would play music and have games, and so there's people were ill-informed. So we decided to start a magazine, and from there, the people I worked with were had already done television. They'd been doing documentaries, and so one day, one of my colleagues who had done quite a few documentaries for TV, Canadian television, asked me if I wanted to direct a film, and without thinking, I just said okay. And I hadn't really done any. I had a camera. I'd shot videos, like short films on my own, just experimenting with the camera and the equipment, and so that's how I got into making films. I learned by just doing it, and working with people who had more experience than me, and so I've done about 8 documentaries so far. Actually, this one I'm doing now with the Marija Kotri Foundation would be my 9th or 8th film, and it's going to be a short film. And yeah, that's I did one film that was quite successful, which is what brought me to Montenegro. A film called Real Engine about how Native Americans were portrayed in Hollywood films, and that did very well. That was released in 2009, and it's actually still playing in all over pretty much most of the Western world. I am going to the United States in a few weeks to screen the film again, and I'm lucky I get my plane tickets paid for and get to meet new people, and so.
Film Real Engine, koji svjedoči o tome kako je Hollywood prikazivao starosjedioce Amerike, autohtoni narod tog kontinenta, doveo je Neila Diamonda u Crnu Goru. Bila je to 2011. godina, a Neil je već bio umjetnik sa zavidnom biografijom, režiser dobitnih prestižnih nagrada, između ostalih Gemini i Peabody Award, najstarije nagrade u oblasti elektronskih medija, koja se dodjeljuje za iznenredna dostignuća. Osnivač časopisa Nacional, čije kolumne su osvojile titulu Naj George Cadogan Memorial nagrada, fotograf čije umjeće je zauvijek zaustavilo trenutak u prostoru i vremenu, i za to umjeće je nagrađivan.
I came to Montenegro in 2011, September 2011, so it's been 6 years ago. I was in Korea, in Seoul, Korea, and I have a friend who's a well-known film director in the United States. He's Cheyenne. He did a successful film called Smoke Signals. His name is Chris Eyre. He sent me a message on Facebook and asked if I wanted to go with him to Croatia, to Zagreb. He was going to show his film there at a conference, and he suggested to the organizers in Zagreb that I might want to come and show the film. So I did. I said yes right away without thinking. I hate to say no to people, so I just said sure. I've never been to Croatia before, never been to the Balkans before, so why not? I'll go. So we ended up in Zagreb and went to Osijek. We had a screening of our films there, and after Real Engine screened at the theater in Osijek, I was standing outside, and one of the organizers came up to me and said, "Would you like to go to Montenegro?" And I said, "Let me think about it." Okay. And I went back to Canada and back to Montreal, where I was still living, and I got an email from Marija from the University of Montenegro here in Nikšić. And she said, yeah, the conference is in September. And so I flew here, and I was supposed to spend a week, 1 week, 7 days I was supposed to spend here, and then things happened, and I ended up staying for 7 months. And I've been back to Canada briefly, several times in the 6 years I've been here, and I'm still here.
Početak crnogorske umjetničke karijere Kanađanina porijeklom iz plemena Kri, Nila Diamonda, sličan je onom u Montrealu, kada je znao šta želi, a putevi za te želje su se ostvarili. Prije 6 godina posjetio je Crnu Goru kao režiser, tada već popularnog Real Engina, i ta posjeta traje. Marija Krivokapić, profesorica na Crnogorskom univerzitetu, postala je njegova supruga, a Nil je uz umjetničku počeo da gradi pedagošku karijeru. Postao je predavač na univerzitetima u Novom Pazaru i Podgorici. Filmsku priču o hollywoodskoj slici starosjedilaca Amerike nastavio publicističkom o zapadnoj percepciji Crne Gore.
Yeah, I teach in Serbia. I was teaching English conversation at a university in Serbia, in the Sandjak region. I was teaching English conversation and creative writing I've been doing that for 3 years now, I believe. And now I teach in Podgorica. I also teach English conversation and creative writing. And that's pretty much how what I do in Montenegro. And I also just taught a workshop in photography for young people as part of the Marija Kotri Foundation, which was incredible. The kids are incredibly creative. And I also wrote a book with Marija Krivokapić, a professor, and we wrote a book about Montenegro and how people from the West wrote about it, how they perceived Montenegro. So we went back to the early 1800s, late 1700s, and found a lot of material that had been written about Montenegro, both in fiction and non-fiction, from travel writers, and all the way until several years ago. There was a book written about some travelers from Great Britain, the UK, the United Kingdom, traveling to Kotor and Nikšić, and we also covered some of the films that were shot that had to deal with Montenegro, like the James Bond film Casino Royale, a couple other films that were shot in Kotor. Brad Pitt's first film, first starring role was shot in Kotor several years ago. So, but it was mostly books, non-fiction travel writing that had to do with pretty much the history of Montenegro was covered there. So. I find it easier to write because I can do it pretty much any time I want. I can do it in the middle of the night, and I think that's where I've always wanted to write ever since I was a kid. I was 12 years old, something. 14 years old, I remember thinking I would like to write, I would like to do photography, and I would like to make films. I remember when I turned 18, there were no jobs where I was born. Very little work, a lot of unemployment, much like the way Montenegro is. You know, like for young people, there are no jobs. There's high unemployment. And I had to go to get help to survive. And I went to the welfare office where they give you a monthly check, and to a very small amount of money so you can pay your bills and get your food. And the woman working there asked me, because they had to ask you a certain number of questions in order for you to qualify to get some money from the state to help you to survive. And she asked me, so what do you want to do? And I said, very straightforward, I said, I want to write, I want to photograph, and I want to make films. And they gave me some money to survive. And I was very young at the time, so. And that was the path in my life. And I ended up making films, writing, published a book, and teaching photography in Nikšić, Montenegro. So.
Miluce ostvaruje željeni put. Privilegovan je jer zna da mnogi, a među njima i oni koji se kao on odvaže da jasno kažu šta žele, nikada ne uspiju da kažu to smo željeli i tako je bilo, iako bi ostvarenjem tih želja svijet bio bogatiji i smisleniji. I dogodila se Fondacija Marija Kotri. Mil se pronašao u jednoj od njenih misija, promociji stvaralaštva nadarene djece kao reditelj i rukovodilac radionice fotografije. Dešava se to u gradu u kojem je odmah prepoznao da umjetnost cvjeta.
So, Marija approached me one day and said there was a group that had started a foundation for this young woman, young girl from Nikšić who had died tragically in an accident, a railway accident, and they were looking for people to help out with their foundation, doing translations, and also to make a short film. So I volunteered my services. I met the family, George and Svetlana, and we started working together, shooting a film. That took maybe 2 months of shooting, and we are still in the process of finishing the film. And they also have a writing workshop from a writer from the UK, I believe. And we also did a photography workshop with there were 47 young students who showed up. And I gave a brief workshop for maybe 3 hours, 2 hours or something like that, a couple of days ago, and just tried to teach them some very basic photography, mostly composition and lighting, and it was most of them were done on mobile phones, on cell phones, so it was a bit limiting for them. I have to say I was very impressed with a lot of the photographs that were submitted. There's something I wanted to add about the photography workshops. We were coming back from Serbia, Novi Pazar, a couple days ago, and Marija and I were discussing the workshops that were to take place here, organized by the Kotri family. And I was saying to Marija, you know, I think we're only going to get about 15 students. And she said, yeah, probably. It's a small city. And then we arrived in Nikšić and we met with George and Svetlana. And George gave me this look and said, you have 57 students who have applied for the workshops. And 30 students from one school had to be turned away. So I'm more than willing to run more workshops if the interest is still there. So, and more exhibitions would be good. Well, when I first arrived here, I met a lot of people who were in the same line of work that I've been doing for the past several years. I met several writers, filmmakers, editors, musicians, and that's what I like about Nikšić. It has a thriving arts community, which is very interesting for me. And I was working with several people here, and we were talking about several film projects that we might be able to do, but given the atmosphere in the country, in the region really, those projects kind of fell through and we weren't able to do them, which is a shame. But when I heard about Marija, young Marija, and I saw her work, photographs, drawings, and I thought maybe people should know about
Pisanje, film, fotografija bili su san i izbor Nila Diamonda, ali ne i život u Crnoj Gori, uopšte Evropi. To se desilo i Crna Gora je postala Kanađaninu jedna od željenih destinacija za život. U Crnoj Gori je uhvatio intuitivnu i stvarnu vezu sa svojim korijenima, rodnim Kvebekom, čija važna nit je očuvana priroda, oživljavanje tradicije i kulturnog identiteta. Posvećenost prirodi kri naroda sažeto je u njihovom širom svijeta poznatom proročanstvu. Tek kada posljednje stablo bude posječeno, tek kada posljednja rijeka bude zatrovana, tek kada posljednja riba bude upecana, tek tada ćemo shvatiti da se novac ne može jesti.
Well, when I first came, I wasn't expecting to actually live here. I never imagined in my life that I would be living in Europe. But one of the things I really love about Montenegro is the nature. It's beautiful. I think I've been almost everywhere, almost every single town and village in Montenegro. I've taken photographs, shooting video, and I've written a bit about it for our magazine. I would like to write more. And I think that's one of the things I really like about it, is the nature. It's still wild. Parts of it are still wild. And where I come from too is we've been isolated. I think that's how we kept our culture and language, is because of our isolation. We were always, we had our first contact with Europeans in 1610, was the first contact that we had. And there were always Europeans living where we were, but we were always the majority. So people talk about colonization, how people are colonized. There was a bit of that, but we always, how should I put it? We were always strong in our culture and language. Most Native Americans have lost their language. And people are still surprised when I tell them, you know, like I never spoke English until I was like 8 years old or something. And so we've kept our culture. A lot of it is coming back. The parts that were lost are coming back, and people still survive by hunting and trapping and fishing. That's all they do. That's all they need to do to survive. My brothers, I have a brother who that's all he went to school until he was about 16 years old, and then he left school, and my father taught him, and that's how he survives to this day. He's a hunter, and he speaks English. He went to school for briefly, and my father never spoke English. He couldn't. He went to school for about a month in a French church-run school, and the reason why he was taken out was the priest, like he couldn't speak French or English, so the priest whacked him on the head with a ruler, and my grandfather heard about it and said, took him out. And there are dances that are coming back that were lost for years. Ceremonies. We have a sweat lodge where you go into a small, it's like a tent, a dome. You heat up rocks and you breathe in the steam, and that's part of Cree spirituality. And it's also medicinal, but there's also like a heavy spiritual element to it. And they have another ceremony that they used to do. It's called a shaking tent ceremony. It's another enclosure with several poles, and the shaman goes in and starts to sing, and you hear animals coming into the shaking tent, and it shakes. I've seen film of it, and it can shake for hours like this. Then you hear animals, you can hear people's voices coming in. And my mother was telling me a story once. There was this Irish woman who was with the Hudson's Bay Company, who was very skeptical about the shaman who was performing the ceremony. So she had the shaman tied up with ropes, and the shaman went in because she thought the shaman, the old man, was shaking the tent. But he went in, tied up, and still the tent was shaking. And that shaking tent ceremony is pretty much all across North America into the United States. The Cheyenne, the Sioux, the Lakota had something similar, and all across the north. My mother told me a story once where they had a ceremony, and they heard an Inuit person, an Inuit shaman, whose voice came into the tent and speaking their language and nobody could understand. Very strange, very not for certain eyes. If I had a choice, I would live up in the mountains in Montenegro. But I would also live where I was born. I would like to have a studio there. And I have this image in my mind of where I would like to live. It's very beautiful there. We have powerful rivers, large rivers. With clean water, nature. We have migratory birds that come every year, and they come in the thousands, you know. And we have herds of caribou. I guess you would call them deer. They look like deer, who number in the hundreds of thousands. They come in every year, and people go hunting. So I would like to live there, and but I would also live in New York or Paris. So Montenegro, New York, Paris, and Waskaganish would be my choices.
Nilovi odabiri mjesta su njegovog umjetničkog izraza i inspiracije. Sada su na relaciji Kanada-Crna Gora. Tu se dešavaju filmovi, knjige, fotografije, teme, motivi i ideje.
I wanted to do a music video, which I've never done before, and somebody approached me, a well-known musician, about 2 years ago, and we were planning on doing a music video. And I think I had a good idea on how to shoot it with a very limited budget, and I would like to do that. But I'm also planning on, I'm working with a director in Canada, and we've been planning on doing a feature film based on a true event that happened in Canada between the Cree, between my people and his people actually. So what we want to do is I would direct the Cree part of the story, and he would direct the Inuit part of the story, and just combine the two stories together. And it's like a Romeo and Juliet story that happened a long time ago. So that's what I would like to do. And I'd also like to finalize the Marija Kotri story. So.